Republicans are busy patting themselves on the back for avoiding revenue increases in the debt deal. But this ignores what raising the debt ceiling means. It permits the government to borrow more to finance spending. This doesn't force a future Congress to raise taxes to pay for it, or does it? Peter Schiff, the president of Euro-Pacific Capital, joins me now. Peter, welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Thanks for having me, Judge.
Doesn't this basically just kick, I hate to use that phrase, but I will, kick the can down the road and do to us what LBJ and his and do to future generations what LBJ and his generation have done to us?
Well, you know, you said they may be patting each other on the back, but they're kicking the taxpayers in the groin. You know, this is a complete victory for the Democrats. There are no spending cuts whatsoever in this plan. And in fact, the Republicans are claiming there are no tax increases. That's a lie, too, because the enormous increase in the national debt represents a tax increase. We have to pay it back. And I think you're wrong on one thing. We're not leaving it to our kids. We're going to pay for it with massive inflation. We're going to have to run the presses 24/7 to buy up all this additional debt, which is massive inflation, which is a tax on this generation, not our posterity.
Right. If they can't pay back $14.3 trillion, how do they think they can pay back $16.7 trillion?
They can't.
Do they think of these things?
You know, the one bit of irony here is the president thinks that they've raised the debt ceiling enough to get through the next election. I think he's probably wrong. I think the economy is going to be so weak between now and then that the deficit's going to be so much worse than they think it's going to be that we might run into this new debt ceiling long before the November 2012 election.
Do you advise investors not to invest in the government of the United States or not to invest in dollar-based investments?
Well, absolutely.
So why?
I mean, that's why the dollar hit a record low today against the Swiss franc, a record low today against the Japanese yen. The only reason it's not even weaker is because people are preoccupied with European problems, which in my opinion are far smaller than our own problems. But that is the tax that we're going to pay. These massive deficits, trillions of dollars of debt a year, it's going to be financed by the Fed. They're going to print money. They're going to call it QE, whatever it is. But it's a tax, and it hits every American who has savings, who has investments, who works for wages. And so if you want to avoid the biggest tax increase of all, you cannot own U.S. dollars or any debt denominated in dollars, including treasuries.
When you say it's a tax, and if you want to avoid the biggest tax increase of all, you mean that the value of the dollar will go down, seriously down, as a result of what the Congress is probably going to agree to do tonight and the borrowing that will follow that agreement.
Well, absolutely. When the Federal Reserve prints money out of thin air to buy those bonds so the government can spend money, that diminishes the value of everybody else's dollars. So prices go up. When oil prices are rising, when food prices are rising, that increase is a tax. It's going up because the government is running deficits, and there's no other reason.
What would happen if the government offered bonds and nobody bought them? Or if nobody wanted to loan their money to the government because they don't want to go through the agita that they went through over the weekend, wondering if they're going to get paid back on time?
Well, more and more people aren't buying them. Foreign nations aren't buying them. That's why the Federal Reserve was doing the QE in the first place, because they needed buyers for our debt. And eventually, nobody will want to buy. Who's going to want to buy our bonds at 0% interest or close to it when inflation is running out of control? You know, that's why the government wants to keep lying about inflation, because if people knew how bad it was, nobody would buy them.
If we had a gold standard, would the government be able to do this?
Well, absolutely not. Why do you think they oppose a gold standard? Because they want the big deficits, despite what they say.
Got it. Peter Schiff, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us. Lawmakers in Washington claim they want to pump the brakes on